Hey, BIP of Bizarre Angels Productions, and I want to make this video a short one given the mental anguish the Nickelodeon vs. Capcom video caused, because everyone's speculating the roster for Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls, and since my last two videos exploring the topic have kinda sunk in the algorithm, I'd figured third time's a charm. Let's not talk about the top 10, not top 20, but top 40 characters that should, might, or could end up in this game. Or you could just watch the Nicktoon/Nickelodeon vs. Capcom video I had made. That'd be appreciated too. It's really good. So, why 40? Well, there are three rules the developer said when they decided the roster. First and foremost, they wanted to include characters who failed to be the face of Marvel. Two, at the same time, you also need to select characters that would give us a balance of battle types and styles, aka gameplay and mechanics, such as zoners, grapplers, rushdown, etc. Three, lastly, we needed to sprinkle in a few surprises and leave room for characters who have never been playable in a fighting game before. And I'm adding a fourth section. This is a game being made by Japanese producers and developers, and Marvel's reputation in Japan is weird. They aren't crazy about most superheroes, hence why the Capcom side of the Marvel roster and some Marvel choices really need to cater to them, but there are several exceptions, and we're going to make a separate list all about that. So basically, I'm doing a top 10 of each one. The faces, the balance of the battle types, those who never been playable in fighting games before, and who caters to Japanese people. No particular order in which ones, but enough rambling. If you made it far into this video, type Kamala Best Girl, and let's go. First up, there's Black Panther. I checked American and Japanese Twitter, and everyone wants him playable in this game, but this would be a redemption because when he was an Infinite, not only did they cut him from the game so people could pay for him as DLC, he didn't even get to say Wakanda because of the merged reality, and worse, they just gave him nothing but claw slashes. People basically say he was the functional replacement for Wolverine, but those who actually play these type of games argued he was more like Sabretooth and X-23 with unique moves. But T'Challa is more than that. This game could actually give him techniques that even the MCU hasn't used, commanding zombies, creating spirit weapons, vibranium weapons, store and release kinetic energy spears. That's cool. I want them to see if they could use that. Next is Shang-Chi. It's been a while since a Marvel fighter had a martial arts focused person outside of Ryu, so let that be Shang-Chi. His movie was well received, so the grifters were less pissed, and they could probably do a lot with both the rings and his martial arts skills in tandem. And finally, Wolverine. I'll talk about functions later, but Stormers-proof X-Men are back in fighting games, and if he shows up, those still burn from Infinite are going to be really happy to have their Rushdown legend back in the game. So, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are going to be the Fantastic Four. This is a 4v4 game, and if you're going to announce a game when that movie might finally bring them back into public consciousness again, putting them in a fighting game could work. Human Torch being the Rushdown, Sue being a tricky fighter, Thing being a brawler, and Reed being a zoner grappler with his limbs and gadgets to make him more distinct from Kamala being in the game. Especially she seems to be more of a mix of an all-rounder and a Rushdown. Also, we're putting in Carol, aka Captain Marvel. Love or hate her, anytime she's on a roster, it always causes people arguing and controversy, and some of those arguments led to sales for her fans and detractors using her as a punching bag. But Kamala's in the game, and even Square Enix had her in the cameo to explain Kamala's love for her. Plus, this is an Arc System game, a blonde all-rounder Rushdown hybrid. She's practically a Super Saiyan, something they worked with very well in Fighter Z. Plus, Arc Sys could write her personality the way that they've done like all the others. Remember, Marvel told Arc System to make the type of game that they want to make, so they can write them any way they want. Next, Spider-Man Miles Morales. The debate has been whether or not he's been an echo or a standout, so focus on all of this Spider's unique attributes. Energy blast, energy shield, stealth attacks, and we also need to see him with that electric energy sword. That is sick. Then we also have Captain America, but Falcon. Falcon's movie did pretty well, and as the face of Captain America's legacy, this is a great opportunity to have the aerial-focused fighter building meter and mixing of Cap's techniques with Falcon's own unique takes on it. Next, let's move on to the 10 for their gameplay styles. Scarlet Witch was considered for Marvel vs. Capcom 2, but she was rejected because the developers would be worried she'd be too overpowered, so make her a fighter whose attacks and specials would have unique properties and trajectory compared to zoners that the player has to try to manage and figure out. Next is Moon Knight. Having him switch stances towards his personalities and weapon uses makes him a character whose gameplay would be very cool to see adapted. Then there's Ant-Man. If they can find a way to make his small and giant size used in combat without making him either overwhelmingly broken or weak, he'd be one of the most unique fighters in a tag fighting game. Afterwards is Kingpin. He was seen as not interesting enough in MVC3 and lost his spot to MODOK, but making him a brawler grappler using his cane for longer range attacks, having his minions come out to bring them to him, or use his mutation from Civil War with Ox Tentacles. Then there's Mr. Sinister. Now, he uses genetic material, which could make him interesting as a mid-range menace with his tentacles and shifting his limbs at close range, and including his telekinesis, teleportation, and mind control can make him mechanically interesting. Juggernaut has been long absent from these games, and having a slow, powerful tank build, but we can't just have two grapplers alone, so give him some armor for his attacks and grabs extra dangerous if you're able to get in close, plus some long-range moves involving using, shockwaves to help him do a bit more damage from afar. Dr. Octopus was also planned for a Marvel fighter, but in 3, he had glitches with his tentacles. That might not be an issue in the modern day, and making him a unique grapple zoner who can wall crawl up different stages with different trajectory on his attacks should be pretty fun to play. Then there's Mystique. I'm trying not to put too many X-Men characters, but when you have a shapeshifter and Street Fighter V had Seth take other characters' moves and reflect them onto themselves, that's practically perfect for her to use, given that she also shapeshifts and can also replicate other fighters in the roster or not in the roster. Namor is a character that got more popularity despite being relatively well known, but Marvel has almost never had a fighting game where a character primarily used water abilities and magic to work, and it'd be interesting to see how they actually explore that if he was put in the game. Finally, there's Cloak and Dagger. I've heard people talk about how they want Ultron in as a puppet fighter, and while that's a great idea, Ultron's already been in a fighting game. I almost put them in a never been playable, but this would be different since one could act as a puppet for the other. Cloak using his shadow and teleportations to bring Dagger close to attack them, but with her daggers, or Dagger using her attacks to have Cloak follow up with by using his cloak to freeze people, or absorb their life force and phase through their opponents. Now for the surprises never playable in the 2.5 fighting game before. Loki. Loki has got to be one of the most beloved and requested characters to be in a Marvel fighting game. Almost everyone's Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite's roster wishlist had him on there. The reason why he wasn't in 3 was because Nitsuma didn't feel like he was right for a fighting game, but ArcSys can definitely work with tricky characters from what I've heard, and it's crazy none of Infinite's leaks had Loki even in the roster. Also, Daredevil. Now, Daredevil was considered back in Marvel vs. Capcom 2 with Black Widow and Scarlet Witch, but the devs feared that their normal fighting movesets wouldn't be compelling, but with his bully clubs used as a staff, a nunchuck or a flail, and heightened senses, he's got a lot to work with mechanically, and people would want him in anyway. Also, Magic. Magic has had so many people request for her from Marvel vs. Capcom 4, and not only is she the part of the New Mutants movie everyone liked, her powers and abilities give her so much for the dev team to work with. Then there's Green Goblin, who's one of Spider-Man's villains, and like Ock, a lot of people want members of Spider-Man's Rose Gallery to make it in the game in some way or form, and as Spider-Man's arch nemesis at Even Infinite reference, this is the perfect time for a fighting debut. Blade is super beloved as a character, and he wasn't in Capcom 3 because the developers considered him to be too similar to Dante, but there's no Capcom this time, so it's a perfect opportunity to end up using that mentality with Blade's weapons and vampire hybrid fighting prowess. So I was torn between Fin Fang Foom and Soren for this list because Fin Fang Foom was actually going to be a boss in Marvel vs. Capcom 1, but was passed over because there were some race issues involving Iron Man characters and villains, so they rejected him, and Soren is a talking dinosaur man. And I ultimately went with Soren because if you tell a person who knows General Marvel that there's a dinosaur person and there's a fighting game with them from Marvel, you know they're going to ask questions or be interested in picking up the game. Also, Black Bolt. Black Bolt is a choice that will surprise people since the Inhuman's reputation wasn't handled that well thanks to Perimeter. However, Black Bolt is so much cooler than people give him credit for. He can manipulate electrons and cause mental damage. He's got a sonic scream, and that can form a shockwave to something that can destroy a battleship, but can also channel that into his arms and feet to create a Maester Blow Fist, move fast, and control tech mechanics with every step. And to be a redemption to his character, especially given his performance from Multiverse of Madness. He was probably going to be playable in Ultimate Alliance 3, but got cut during development, so now would be his perfect time to shine. Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur had their show canceled under questionable treatment by the Disney Channel network, and given you've got a girl who can swap minds with a dinosaur, if Sauron doesn't get in, these two getting it would be a choice no one would expect, but it would be exciting, though the dinosaur would probably do most of the fighting. We also have Man-Thing. I almost put him on the mechanic side of the list, but Man-Thing would just be such an inspired choice. He's got the fans who'd buy, and his appearance and powers alone would make him a shocking pick. A slow but powerful grass giant with devastating range on power Dormammu would be such an inspired choice that would get people sold on the game. And finally, there's Squirrel Girl. Squirrel Girl has never been in a console game outside of a Lego game, and she was close to making it into Marvel vs. Capcom 3, but they boringly went with Rocket instead. And yet, Doreen's popularity would make her a really fun choice to be in this roster, from being cameos to being a supporting character. She was also part of the main cast of Marvel Rising, so she does have younger fans. She almost had her own TV show too, and people love her, and she'd be one heck of a lethal joke character. And this is a game made by Arc System Works. You're telling me that the same company that made Makoto is working on the game with the same company as Marvel's Squirrel Girl. Level 3, Felicia and Akuma Squirrel combination. Let's go. Finally, let's get to the choices that caters to Japanese people. First up, Hisako Ichiki, Armor. Armor is one of Marvel's X-Men characters that still has just remained popular, so much that Dorgi had said that she didn't show up anything, and it's okay, most people don't notice, but Hisako actually appeared in Marvel Anime X-Men as one of the main members of the X-Men because she's so loved in Japan. I talked about that Japanese poll for Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 DLC on this channel before, but I talked about that from the Capcom's representatives, but on the Marvel side, guess who's under Venom, Miss Marvel, and Green Goblin as the most requested character from there? Hisako. She's also the lead character for the Ultimate 2004 alternate run, with her armor being powered by her ancestors that can shapeshift in size so much as she can beat Fing Fang Foom at full size. So I'd say put her in. Shuma Garaf has to make it in. Shuma became so popular with the Japanese audiences, Capcom was fighting Marvel to get him into Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and they only relented as DLC to the point one of Shuma's endings has him using the fame from defeating the Galactus into a Japanese game show, and if the game needs a weird pick, there you go. After that is Psylocke. Yeah, the X-Men are really, really popular in Japan, and Psylocke, either Psy or Canon can work, and Betsy's in Kwan's body, who's still very popular, so any of them would work as a representative for Psylocke. And then there's Venom, who I feel like I shouldn't have to introduce, but yeah, he's like really popular in Japan, like much more than I was expecting, so he's a deadlock. And Deadpool. The one I shouldn't have to explain, but Marvel Disc Wars was divisive, but Deadpool was so popular, people just enjoyed him riffing on the anime and the production team during his screen time, especially since in that Japanese sub, he was voiced by Takehito Koyatsu. Who's that? Dio's voice actor. And remember Deadpool in the last fighting game he was in? Marvel vs. Capcom 3, where he had some of the most hilarious quotes in that game, as well as interactions, and he only got in because of a translation error where he was on Marvel's Don't Use list until Capcom asked Marvel why a fan favorite shouldn't be in the game, and Marvel relented and just let him in. Then there's Cyclops, who has to be in at this point. Marvel Anime had him as the leader of the X-Men, even though they gave Wolverine top billing and his own show. But Cyclops still had his time to shine as both the team player, the team leader, and the ally. And after X-Men 97, most people seem to be on board with him over there. Plus, there's Surge. Surge was another Japanese X-Men character created in the 2000s who ended up becoming really popular and a member of X-Men Academy. And despite some recent treatment, she was brought back in a comic book in 2024, and she's all lightning. Japan likes two things: cute characters and teens, and if they like more, they'll definitely like Surge. Plus, Storm and Miles use lightning in their attacks, but she's all lightning. This girl would basically be a mix of Blanca and Mika from Under Knife and Birth with her gauntlets, and that's a recipe for fan favorite in their books. Okay, Gorgon, aka Thomas Shishido. Originally, I had Sunfire on this list, but when I double-checked one of Thorgy's videos with the X-Men build roster, yeah, this guy is a menace. He is a sword-wielding mutant who formed a cult, can turn people into stone, and is aiming to be a god killer with the sword that he has. This man is an absolute menace, and despite being redeemed, his sheer power and aura would make him an absolute favorite when Japanese people can see what he can do. She-Hulk. You might be surprised to see She-Hulk here, but as it turns out, she's got quite a number of fans who love her character and design, especially in Japan. I didn't talk about Hulk because obviously he's going to make it, but I actually saw some people say that they want her in the game over Hulk because they're tired of big guys being the grapplers. Also, back in Marvel vs. Capcom 3's development, they picked She-Hulk over Miss Marvel back when that was Carol. And She-Hulk also told Deadpool if there was ever an MVC4, he'll be destroyed there too. So wouldn't it be funny if they reunited in a Marvel 4v4 game, but it wasn't Capcom? And it'd be so funny if she referenced it too. And for my final surprise, Amaterasu Mikaboshi. Yeah, this is one none of you were expecting. This guy is one of Marvel's gods, considered in the Marvel Universe to be the Japanese god of evil, a personification of the void before the creation of the universe that wants to rewrite existence, and was a threat to even Thor. And while Chaos War was divisive from my research, his character was appreciated for his size of Japanese mythology. And there's going to be some sort of single-player content story mode. You're going to need a villain and major antagonist for the game, and this guy oozes final boss status. So yeah, those are the characters I think might make the game. I didn't talk about characters like Thor or Hulk because obviously they'd probably make it into the roster. And just thinking about the basic choices would be boring. But yeah, let me know who you would include if you like my choices, if you think some of my choices might actually happen, or which ones are way too out of left field and wouldn't even be considered. And BIP of Bizarre Interest Productions, signing off.